Is a complex genetic disease that is caused by specific changes to the genes in one cell or groups of cells. These changes disrupt normal cellular function, specifically affecting how a cell grows and divides. In contrast to normal cells, they just don't stop growing or dividing. Uncontrolled cellular growth is cancer. Okay, cancer cells have more genetic changes compared to normal cells. However, not all changes cause cancer. They may be a result of it. They divide excessively because of dysregulation of these systems, and there are many different factors that can lead to these changes, and acquired mutations are the most common cause. They occur from damage to genes in a particular cell during a person's life. For example, this could be a breast cell or a colon cell, which then goes on to divide many times and forming a tumor. This could be something like a mutagen or a carcinogen, like tobacco, UV radiation, viruses, and even age. Germline mutations, ones that you actually inherit, are much less common. They pass directly from a parent to a child at the time of conception, and as the embryo grows into a baby, the mutation is copied. Overall, between 5 and 20% of cancers can come from this sort of germline process. Most of them are going to be acquired mutations during your life. Years, researchers have been looking through microscopes trying to find distinct features of cancerous cells to help determine the difference. The problem is you can't really tell with the naked eye. You have to look a lot closer. Cellular shape is one of the ways that we do that because normal human cells come in a variety of shapes and sizes. Different types of cells don't really look alike. So when you look at cancer cells, they have some characteristic things. So you can see here, they're going to grow and divide even when there's no space. The shape will be much more varied and individual. The nucleus will be significantly larger. The chromosomes will be organized in a really unusual fashions. And eventually, if you get into large enough tumor cells, you might even stop seeing boundaries between the cells. Other things like the chromatin in normal cells is very fine and evenly distributed, where in cancer cells it aggregates into clumps. The nucleolus, tumor aggressiveness, is measured by observing the morphology of the nucleolus. So if the nucleolus is increasingly enlarged or irregular, that is probably going to be a cancer cell. And other things for more developed tumors are going to be like blood supply. So they have to actually develop blood vessels to feed the tumor. So development of blood vessels or angiogenesis is one thing that we can look at for tumor cells as well. One out of every two men and one out of three women will develop cancer during their lifetime, according to the American Cancer Society, with the current list of known cancer genes, including about 70 genes associated with germline mutations and 342 associated with somatic mutations. However, they really fall into two basic classes of genes. You have proto-oncogenes and tumor suppressor genes. Proto-oncogenes are cancer-causing genes, or at least genes that have the potential to become cancer causing. So proto-oncogenes are the normal versions, and when they mutate, they become oncogenes, and that could lead to a variety of impacts, like an excessive amount of these growth stimulating hormones or even hyperactive ones. So it's not typically a single mutation, but if these major categories, if these proto-oncogenes become mutated, or the other type, the tumor suppressors, become mutated, that can lead to that growth. But it's an accumulation of the mutations over time. So more than one mutation is generally needed. If cancer results from an accumulation of mutations, and if mutations occur throughout life, then the longer we live, the more likely we are to develop cancer. And then cancer cells basically escape from cell cycle controls. If the abnormal cells remain at their original site, we call that a benign tumor. If they begin to spread or metastasize, we call that a malignant tumor. The other names like adenoma, carcinoma, whatever, that is going to depend upon where they're forming and what's actually occurring. Down to it, all cellular action is the basis of life. So of course, cell signaling is going to be a major player in cancer. So the RAS gene is one of these examples of a well-studied G protein, in this case, that is a growth factor receptor for the cascade of proteins that are involved here. So RAS is going to stimulate cellular division. So if you have a cancer cell, the RAS gene is going to be overactive. That activated growth factor is going to signal development even when there shouldn't be development. And proteins downstream of RAS they're going to be altered at high frequencies, suggesting that the RAS pathway may contain multiple opportunities for therapeutic intervention. So that's something that we're really studying to try to find ways to stop cancer. Growth stimulators, you also have the growth inhibitors. Tumor suppressor genes, which p53 is the most well-studied example of this, inhibit cell division. Tumor suppressor proteins normally repair damaged DNA, preventing the accumulation of cancer-causing mutations. P53 is a good example because it's part of that cell division process. Other ones control things like adhesion, and drive things like anchorage dependence and density dependence. The P53, named for its 53,000 protein products, so it's 53,000 proteins, part of that structure. This is considered sort of the guardian angel of the genome. Once activated by DNA damage, several genes become triggered, which can repair DNA, and if it can't repair the DNA, will typically activate apoptosis. Cancer cells need to turn P53 off if they're going to become cancerous. Studies and numerous different things that underlie how cancer works and the various signs and symptoms and structures that underlie it. And it's summarized in a very well-known study called The Hallmarks of Cancer. The images are provided here from the actual study. You can tell that it's a very complicated process. But what happens is there are a series of mutations that have to occur for something to become cancer. So you have cells that are cancerous, but unless you have these accumulation of mutations, you're not really going to see that. So we see overall that you need a self-sufficiency of cell division. There needs to be a lack of response to stop signals. They have to be able to turn off apoptosis. They have to activate the replicative immortality, so they have to have that limitless reproductive potential so that they can grow without limit. They need to be able to develop angiogenesis or develop their own blood supply. They have to invade other organisms or be able to metastasize. They have to be able to survive with very little oxygen and very little structure. They have to be able to avoid the immune system. The genome needs to be unstable. Inflammation is common. Lots of different hallmarks of cancer exist. And so we're looking at all of these different steps and components, and you can see the complex interaction of feedback loops on the right. All of these things are opportunities and control points that we might be able to take advantage of to stop cancer in the future. Different types of cancer treatment, and it depends upon the type of cancer that you are dealing with and where it is and how advanced it is. Hormone therapy might be appropriate for something like breast cancer, as that typically is hormone responsive, but not for something like brain cancer. Surgery will work in certain situations, but it depends upon the location, whether that surgery is survivable. The additional problem is that the cells look the same, so you typically have to remove more tissue than you probably should to make sure that you got it all out, which is problematic. If you have cancer of the blood, like leukemia, bone marrow transplantation might be a good option for you. Chemotherapy is risky because you're literally putting poisons into the blood supply that target rapidly dividing cells, and not only cancer is rapidly dividing, so is skin, for example, which is why you typically shed the lining of your intestines and lose your hair. Targeted therapies are going to be more appropriate and are where we're looking moving forward because they're targeted specifically to the cancer that you are studying. Maybe it's something with a signaling molecule or a protein, so we're really hoping that that's going to be sort of the future. Radiation helps kill those cells, but it also can kill the cells around them. It can be problematic. Immunotherapy, cancers learn to avoid the immune system. So if we can activate the immune system to stop cancer, maybe that'll work. So there's lots of different types of treatments. And with new techniques that can rapidly sequence DNA, we're hoping that more targeted personalized therapies will exist so that we can stop using these blanket treatments that can be harmful to the rest of your body. Things to prevent cancer or make yourself immune to cancer? Well, it really depends upon what you're doing and what type of cancer you're talking about. If you avoid exposure to carcinogens like tobacco smoke, that can help. But in addition to mutations and genetic alterations, a number of tumor viruses can cause cancer. Okay, so HPV and HBV, the human papillomavirus, that for example, or the hepatitis virus, those are both ones you can get vaccines for, which can help prevent cancer. You can also get a pap smear, which can help check for cancer earlier. You can check for breast cancer. You can check for skin cancer. Lots of different things. Basically, cancer prevention may not be fully possible, but the earlier cancer is caught, the more likely cancer is to be treatable. Okay. And then people are like, oh, well, like HPV causes cervical cancer. So really only girls need to worry about that one. But HPV, human papillomavirus, is spread through sex and causes cervical cancer, sure, but it also causes anal cancer and genital warts. So even guys should get these vaccines, even though, of course, they don't have a cervix. So really, lifestyle choices, exposure, that kind of thing, they can help prevent cancer. But if you live long enough, it's likely to occur. So being aware of your body and talking with your doctor and being open and getting help when you need it is really your best option.